Good morning, everyone. Today we're checking out a brand new video from Popcross Studios, episode 11 of the Trismegistus Academy story, Philosophy of a Madwoman. Let's hop in and check it out.
Previously on the Trismegistus Academy.
Oh, yes! Yes, I could tell from the thumbnail we were going to get some kind of file laughing Ludo, but to think it's actually going to be Heat Blast of Ben 10, plus a Volpomancer one, i.e. Wild Mud. This is going to be awesome.
Academy. The Maverick class of the Trismegistus Academy were taken on a school trip to Dimension P138 to explore and study the creatures there. Unfortunately, Eloise Ludum, headmistress of the Ludum Academy for Fearsome Fighters, had somehow learned of this trip, possibly via a spy she has in Tahe, and she brought some of her students to the same dimension at the same time. This made the Mavericks, as well as their allies inside the LAFF, Alcaya Lamani, Waru Umarek, and Katas, nervous, as they weren't sure if Ludum was getting close to figuring out that they were all working together to construct a plan to take down her school. Some of the Mavericks ended up in a difficult situation with their LAFF allies, in which they had to work together to take down two very dangerous monsters. In the process, Ludum appeared on the scene and threatened the Tahe students, and tried to demand her students not work with the other kids. Thankfully, Professor Strone Goggins from Tahe attacked Ludum, keeping her distracted.
I actually still can't believe Goggins is just a straight-up regular-ass human. He has nothing.
And nearly killing her, while the Tahe and LAFF students dealt with the dragons. Alcaya had been injured early in the fight and was mostly healed by Jake Tajin from Tahe, but he had to go help another student before he fully finished healing her. Ignoring her pain, inspired by Strone's own resilience, Alcaya fought through her remaining injury and tried to help Strone kill Ludum. Ludum managed to escape and banished Alcaya from her school. Though, before leaving, Maverick student Niseko Kuznet was able to fly a creature called a Cellscore in and have it tear one of Ludum's arms off. While Alcaya had hoped at one point to get information out of Ludum on who had killed her older overseer sister, Delilah, now her main concern is what Ludum will do to retaliate after what just occurred. Let's find out in the next chapter of the Trismegistus Academy.
Here we go.
While the rest of that day was a bit of a blur, Alcaya had a sense of ease settled into her mind early on by the Trismegistus Academy's headmistress. Alcaya, you are safe now. We are going to do everything in our power to ensure Eloise has no opportunity to harm you ever again.
Hey, that's great.
You can stay at our academy for as long as you need, or we can return you to your home dimension, if you so choose.
No, that'd be a death sentence.
Headmistress Evangeline Trismegistus had been called onto the scene soon after Ludum disappeared into her portal. The tall, elegant, bird-faced woman quickly proved just how different she was to the LAFF's headmistress. She gathered everyone to check on them and ensure they were safe, including the LAFF students, doing so in a very calm and collected manner. She was given a quick explanation of what had just occurred and showed no signs of anger at the event. She even stated that she was proud of her own students for working with the LAFF kids. She deemed that their field trip should be concluded early and they should all return to Tahe, where Eloise could not unexpectedly appear unless directly invited and allowed in. Evangeline offered for both Katas and Waru to return to Tahe with them as well, not even knowing that they were working on a plan to take down Ludum with the Mavericks. Alcaya knew it was a bit selfish, but she hoped they'd say no. As glad as she was to not be going back to Ludum school herself, if Waru and Katas both didn't as well, they'd have nobody on the inside to keep an eye on what Ludum was up to next.
And that can be a downside when you're plotting the murder of the woman. And so they would need to say no and return. Otherwise, like you said, no one on the inside.
Even with that in mind, part of her was disappointed when both her LAFF allies elected to return to their own school, saying a quick goodbye to Alcaya. It felt like a cold send-off, but she knew they were likely trying to not look suspicious to anyone who may be watching to report.
Oh shit, we're gonna get Humongosaur as well, damn!
Back to Ludum.
Full Ben 10.
All the Tahe students and faculty who'd come on the trip were then gathered up, and Alcaya was taken with them back to the peaceful, pleasant, grassy fields of the Trismegistus Academy. Jake was given some time to finish healing Alcaya's injury before he moved on to others in his class. Anna sat with them as Jake's powers did their thing, and asserted how glad she was that Alcaya was out of the LAFF. Alcaya noticed Jake and Anna making cutesy eyes at each other, but she had too much on her mind to be very curious what was going on there.
Oh, they're a
Alcaya
happy
pointed
couple.
out that Ludum may learn she was in league with the Tahe students since she'd left the multiverse jumping wristwatch Jake had given her under her bed. Thankfully, before the day was out, Waru called the Mavericks through that watch to tell them he'd broken into her room and stolen it. Alcaya was a bit surprised by his...
Yo, guys, don't worry. I broke it and stole it. You broke it and stole it? Hey, did you want her to find it? No, that's fine.
Forward thinking
Take my little
and
stuff.
assumed Katas had told him to do it, but he said that it was his own idea and he'd done it all himself. Alcaya was given an incredibly comfortable bed to sleep in. It was in a guest room of a regal marble building next to a quietly stirring stream. She thought her head would be spinning too much to sleep, but the sound was so soothing and the bed was so perfectly comfortable.
So
the next thing she knew,
peaceful.
she was waking up more rested than she'd been in months. Soon after waking up, Alcaya was approached by Tahe's head counselor, Louisa Hay. She was an older
hello.
woman with short, light blonde hair and a soothing smile that never faded. She asked Alcaya how she was feeling about being unable to return to the LAFF. While Alcaya didn't mention her plans with the
not
Tahe
upset.
kids to take down the school, she did say how much she hated it there and how much she'd hated Ludum. Louisa very gently said, "Well, we will make sure that Eloise has no opportunities to harm you again, and make sure that hate does not hold a place in your heart very long."
Hey, chill.
Alcaya had a hard time picturing herself ever not hating Ludum, but she appreciated the comfort.
That's different.
She bounced back and forth between relief and concern for her friends back at the LAFF, but thankfully, she was given a chance to eat breakfast with the Maverick class. When no teachers or staff were around, they all reassured her that they all still intended to try and take down Ludum, no matter what the cruel headmistress did in retaliation for the prior day's events.
Will it
They
kill?
all spoke to Alcaya like she was an old friend, and made her feel so welcome. Amelia praised her for fighting through her pain to attack Ludum. Anna said how
that's
excited
some
she was to be
guts.
talking to Alcaya in person. Jake said he'd speak with Evangeline about getting Alcaya into the Maverick class as an official student at the school. Nobody seemed upset that she had possibly jeopardized the plan to defeat Ludum with her actions. Alcaya was starting to think that attacking Ludum had been the best move she could have made. She hadn't even told the
Ludum is now down a limb.
Tahe kids about her sister yet,
Though, of course, that isn't going to last long, so probably just make a new one.
but
or
she was
some
building
crazy
even more
shit.
hope that someone at this school would be able to help her find her sister's killer. Maybe the Trismegistus Academy was where she was always meant to be. The Mavericks had the day off since they were still supposed to be on their class trip that day. They took some time to share the photographs of creatures they'd all been able to take on the first day of the trip. The upper year student Velignus had gotten the best pictures by far, as he had taken dozens, if not hundreds, mid-fight with some of the creatures they'd gone up against.
Oh, wow,
He even
that's
got some
ballsy.
cool and funny shots of his fellow students in action, which everyone appreciated. Near the end of sharing these photos, the Mavericks were all asked to come into a meeting at Evangeline's office. Surprisingly, while the upper years didn't join, Alcaya was invited along. Calling the headmistress's space an office was a bit of a stretch. It was more like a marble gazebo with open walls that allowed the calming sound of that same stream that passed by Alcaya's sleeping space to trickle along and ring through it. There were rounded wooden chairs brought in for all the students to sit in. There was a spare one that seemed like it was meant for Strone Goggins, but after he entered, he chose to remain standing at attention with his hands behind his back. Evangeline addressed them all.
Very military standing.
Well, our little field trip wound up being a bit more of an adventure than we had anticipated. But, ultimately, this will all have been for the best. In the least, so long as she is interested in remaining, the Mavericks may very well have gotten a new classmate today.
Hey!
It was Alcaya Lamani. There is no need to give your answer here and now, but after seeing how well you already appear to get along with the Mavericks, and after Professor Strone Goggins vouched for your resilience, you are invited to join our school and become a part of this class.
Hell yeah, I'm signing
The
up.
Mavericks all cheered. Alcaya hadn't anticipated it happening that fast. She looked over at Strone, who gave her the slightest of nods, yet it felt like a massive compliment. Overwhelmed with emotions, Alcaya very quietly said,
It most definitely is, considering that, once again, I'm pointing out that Stoggins, or Goggins, I'm sorry, I'm butchering his name, is human. Regular human.
Yes, I'd really like to stay. Thank you.
I actually like what he's doing right now to give it the illusion of the Omnitrix, but inverted. And the black kind of diamond shape surrounded by green, a complete inverse to the actual Omnitrix symbol, which is a green hourglass with black triangles on the
There was
side.
another brief cheer from the class, then Evangeline went on. I visited the Ludum Academy once again this morning to inquire as to how Eloise intended to respond to the events from yesterday. I wasn't sure what to expect, as Eloise has always been unpredictable.
A mad woman?
While it does not immediately strike me as a good idea, Eloise has stated that she fully intends to move forward with a combat tournament between the LAFF and our own students, though she has some conditions which I am not willing to commit to.
Oh,
The
boy.
students
What is
shifted
it
in
now?
their seats. Alcaya didn't like the sound of this either. Ludum would definitely be out for revenge somehow.
10,000%.
Alcaya just wasn't sure who all she'd target. Evangeline continued. She has demanded that Professor Goggins be released of his position immediately as penance for his assault. The class looked at Strone. He remained
So he wants him filed. No.
unmoving and unsurprised. Evangeline then said, she also wants Niseko Kuznet to be forced to execute the cell score that she rode and used to attack Eloise. The class stirred
Also,
more
no.
uncomfortably and looked to Niseko. She just shrugged. I'd do it again. I thought Cindy was just going to hit Ludum with her claw instead of taking her arm off, but still, there's no way I'm killing Cindy, she said, apparently having
she
named
named
the
it.
cell score she'd ridden into
I
battle.
like that.
The headmistress then added, finally, Eloise has stated that she will only move forward with our arranged competition if Alcaya is made a Maverick class student and becomes one of the 7 students to be brought to face off against her own academy's best.
Oh.
Though that is not why I extended the invitation to you, Alcaya. I genuinely believe that you will be a positive addition to this class. That demand was both confusing and worrying. It had to be some sort of trap. Why did Ludum specifically want Alcaya to be a maverick? There were other classes of students at Tahe. If anything, Alcaya would have thought Ludum would try to force Tahe to kick her out of this dimension as soon as possible, so Ludum could send a scout to kill her or something.
Exactly, that's
Maybe
what I was
she wanted
thinking.
one of her own students to kill Alcaya in the competition, where Ludum could watch. Before concern could grow too greatly,
That
the
would be
headmistress said, now these terms are not ones I'd be willing to commit to without a better reason than Eloise simply demanding it. But it may still be beneficial to keep her at least believing that her requests have been approved. So while this is not being done on the timeline I'd originally planned, I must ask, Mavericks, have one or all of you begun constructing a plan to defeat Eloise Ludum and her academy?
Oh, so you knew the whole time. Yeah, okay, we don't have an exact plan. We've mostly been gathering forces.
Everyone froze. Eyes darted back and forth as everyone wondered what they
How
were
did you
supposed to
find
say.
out?
Finally, Jake spoke up. You told us not to try and help with taking her down. Was this some kind of test?
Maybe.
She smiled. Not a test, more of an optional extra credit assignment. If you have done so, then we will be happy to take your plan into consideration and allow you to move forward with it. If not, there is a contingency plan in place.
Again, gathering
Jake
forces.
looked across at his class. Anna was right. When I told Anna that I wanted to make a plan to take down Ludum, she said, because you always say this school is about not teaching us what to think, but how to think for ourselves, us making a plan to take down Ludum was doing basically exactly what we were supposed to. You're a genius, Anna. The blue skin of her face turned slightly purple as she blushed at the compliment.
Aww.
Thanks, but I mean, the plan was all Jake's idea. He's the one who gave Alcaya his Mujawawut on the first day the Ludum kids came here,
Yeah,
so she could be our
Mujawut.
eyes on the inside.
Evangeline seemed genuinely surprised. Alcaya was already a part of this plan. What a
Yep.
lovely synchronicity that she is here now to be more immersed in it.
We got 2
And
more
yes,
on the
well, we
inside.
do want you all to be able to trust that the faculty here is honest with you and has your best interest at heart. It is an important lesson to remember that even the most respected authority is not above making poor decisions. If you feel driven to
you're
make a
human.
choice that goes against
Supposedly. All we know is you have a bird face. I don't know if you're human.
what authorities have deemed the right path
I'ma
and
say
can
you are.
execute a plan that you strongly believe will help more people in the long term, then you should not be afraid to do what you think is truly right. This idea was not mine alone, but when the opportunity was presented to me by an outside consultant, I deemed it worth attempting,
Who?
especially considering we now have multiple endeavors in the works with this group. Before any of the students could even ask who she meant,
shop gang?
a smiling, friendly face walked around the chairs towards Evangeline. I wasn't sure what the other Mavericks would do, but I at least knew there was no chance Jake and Anna would sit on the sidelines once Ludum was put on their radar.
It's all Guy.
A man in his late 20s, clad in a blue tactical suit, stepped up next to Evangeline. Jake, Anna, and Niseko clearly recognized him. Jake stood up from his chair. Sterling? This was your idea? He gave Evangeline a firm hug, then turned to the class. Yeah, well, I had a little visit with Ludum a few months ago that really got me thinking about making her defeat a priority. But the Sharp Gang has had more pressing matters to deal with. When I went to see her, I had hoped we might be able to talk Ludum into helping us face off against the Archons. I'm obviously not a fan of hers, but I figured she'd at least not want the whole multiverse destroyed.
Are you kidding? That woman is so mad she'd want the universe destroyed just so she could, I don't know, try to rebuild it herself? I don't know.
To help.
She's crazy.
Since she's so powerful inside her own dimension, we thought maybe we could lure an Archon in there or something along those lines, but
that would have been
I was being overly optimistic about her interest in helping anyone. I had a bit more hope because I had been told once by a sort of member of our group, Harold the Herald, who used to work for Ludum, that she and I had similar life philosophies. After talking to her and finding out what exactly that meant, though, I realized she was never going to be naturally compelled to help anyone.
Yeah, no.
Not in a way they'd really need. Evangeline stepped aside, moved around her desk, and sat down. It seemed like this had just turned into a mini class session, with Sterling as the guest lecturer. He looked a little too excited to be presenting at Tahe, even if it was to a minimal class. I've met most of you on days when I've come to visit Jake, Anna, and Niseko, but for those of you I haven't, and as a reminder, I'm Sterling Angeal. I'm the co-leader and emotional support head of the Sharp Gang, who are currently trying to defeat the Archon demons that are rampaging across the multiverse.
How many are left again? 4, right?
Well, my hope is that we'll be able to defeat them long before any of you graduate. They are the type of threat many of you will be facing in the future. They are dangerous enough that, as I said, I even considered getting help from people we've had conflicts with in the past. Hence why I went to meet with Eloise Ludum in her dimension. I had wanted to go alone, but had also once promised my lovely girlfriend Kate that I'd never go meet with a dangerous person like Ludum again on my own, so I brought her along as well. We arrived in Ludum's dimension just outside the walls of her new school. We were shocked to see the academy she'd built. This was only a few weeks after you all started here in the Maverick class, and even Evangeline was unaware of what Ludum had been up to in her dimension. To that point, her realm had mainly been used as a place for overseers to gather and watch innocent people and creatures fight for their lives in her death arenas. Alsaya shrank down in her seat, uncomfortable hearing another person reference overseers doing awful things. It sounded like her sister was the polar opposite of most other overseers in the multiverse. She hated having Delilah lumped into a group under the same title as these beings. Sterling continued. Ludum found us almost...
I still have my own fan story of what I would love to happen between Anya, I think that's her name, and Dresden. But, of course, I think I may have already gone on a rant about that in a previous video. If not, I know I did talk about it in a comment with someone on an earlier video. But either way, I have my fan story. I would love for that to become canon. I have no control over what he does.
Almost immediately after arriving in her world.
I'm just a fan.
Thankfully, before those laughing little things attacked us. She'd floated down on that stone platform she uses to control much of her universe as an extension of her overseer runes, and used that to at least temporarily keep the littles away. Despite Kate bringing along a rather large sword just in case she needed it, Ludum was willing to hear me out when I said we were only there to talk. To talk, Ludum sneered. Very presumptuous of you to think I'd have anything to say to you, given the stony, irksome cretin you've recently taken in, and after some of your furry friends kidnapped my former best assistant. I shrugged. Dresden is turning over a new leaf now that he's joined up with us, and we might be willing to work out some kind of arrangement to get Harold back to you if you agree to help us defeat the Archons.
And Harold,
I know they've left your universe alone for now, but they are still a threat to you too. She cackled. Oh, please! As if I even want Harold back. He stopped sending me intel about your little merry band of miscreants months ago. And I'm not afraid of the Archon demons. I've been around nearly as long as the multiverse itself. In my realm,
That's why she's so mad. She's old as hell!
I'm even more powerful than they are. I'd welcome the challenge. Perhaps my new students could prove their worth by squabbling with an Archon's army. Besides, even if they could outwit me, I'd be fine with this multiverse seeing its final days at the hands of the
damn it, I forget her name. Ludum, damn it, that name is difficult actually. Ludum versus Torsa. Who wins?
Archons.
Death battle!
This isn't the first multiverse I've resided in, and it certainly will not be the last. I stepped closer to the platform she was still standing on, hovering a couple feet off the ground so she could keep looking down on us. What do you mean? You remember lives you've lived in other multiverses? Of course, I remember many of my prior lives.
That's how...
This shouldn't surprise you, Silver Boy. When Harold was still relaying information to me, he told me that you have a more firm understanding of how life really works than most. Your soul takes on physical form in one life, you live, learn lessons, have some fun, or have a terrible time, then die and repeat, taking on the same challenges in the next life if you do not overcome them in this one. It's all a big game, and our souls want it to be as exciting as possible. I honestly may have visibly cringed hearing someone who's done as many horrible things as Ludum say that she had similar beliefs about life as I did. Before I could say anything, Kate squeezed the hilt of her sword and said, "If you think that's true, how can you force people to fight to the death for your entertainment? People are trying to live their lives or play their own game, and you make them kill each other or die and miss out on the life they wanted to live." Kate has gotten pretty good at not snapping at people when she's mad, but she also has a bit of an exposed nerve when it comes to someone forcing people to fight to the death in a combat arena. She's had her own share of difficult circumstances
wasn't she from the back cells
to overcome in that
Jake?
vein. Louise gave one of her signature devious grins and said, "Why, my dear, for people to have challenges to overcome in the first place, someone needs to present those to them. And if they don't survive in my arenas to learn, then so be it. They'll have another chance in their next life." I tried to take in what she said and found myself getting a bit angry as well. You think you're benefiting other people's souls by being a villain? She threw her arms in the air. "But of course, why else would I feel so called to be one? I have been this way in all my past lives. I am divinely ordained to be a miraculous menace. In the last life I lived,
So in other words, no matter what life she's in, she's always going to be a crazy mad,
attempted to be more subtle in my efforts to present challenges to people, and it was such a drag. I created a world-renowned sports fighting league where superpowered individuals could test their grit and might by choice.
Wait a minute.
But that was thinking too small.
Vigilance.
Plus, as I was reaching my own end, there were those who were trying to implement too many safety protocols that took all the
That's vigilance! Shit, she was behind vigilance!
fun and danger out of the games. Thankfully, in this life, I was given much more power after I tricked the second overseer of this realm into turning his abilities over to me. Then I reduced this dimension to ash so I could rebuild it in my own vision. A place where I could bring beings from all across the multiverse, force them to face their greatest challenges imaginable, and possibly survive to carry on living a better life, or merely die and hope they are stronger in their next life. Either way, all the while they'd put on a good show for myself and whoever was lucky enough to get a generous invitation from me to come and watch.
Dude, Ludum would frickin' love having a Doomsday.
I was frustrated, but arrogantly thought I may have an argument.
I mean, Doomsday, the character from anything related to Superman.
And that could talk her off this notion. I can understand where you're coming from in thinking people need challenges in life, but there are so many other places where challenges will naturally arise. People will have their own physical challenges, family challenges, societal challenges, health challenges. If you really have the same sorts of beliefs than I do, then don't you think lots of souls come into their lives with certain challenges already lined up without you adding another lethal one into their lives?
Yeah.
That can mean they don't get to face all the challenges they wanted to? She put her hands on her hips. "And what makes you think I am not one of the challenges that some souls selected to face, If you were planning out your life as a human for this lifetime in this specific multiverse, Do you not think that your soul may get its jollies jumping at the idea of being put into an arena where you can fight for survival? Would that not be one of the most exciting events you could plan out for this lifetime?
I mean, that would depend on if I knew what powers that I had going into it. Like, if I had someone I knew how to be able to use it and be able to actually kick some ass with it, yeah, I'd be excited for it. Otherwise, I'd be like, no, I don't want to die immediately.
If you knew there were no real stakes, that you would live another life after this anyhow, then why not take the opportunity to come and fight to the death in one of my arenas? I am divinely guided. Well, it may appear that my scouts are the ones who make the decisions on who to bring to me. Ultimately, their hands are guided by fate. All souls who enter my arena decided to do so before they were even born. I give the opportunity for a good challenge to be had, and simply reap the benefits myself by enjoying the show. I was baffled. I genuinely didn't have an argument for her. In a way, everything she was saying made sense and technically did line up with my own beliefs, which just made it that much more uncomfortable. It was a good reminder that anyone can twist even a positive life philosophy, religion, or set of beliefs into justification for hurting others. Eloise was using a philosophy that I think of as exclusively encouraging someone to become more loving, kind, and resilient over the course of their life, and used it to justify torture and murder of tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of people over her lifetime.
Possibly millions.
Of course, with most overseers being gone now, her audience had dried up for her arenas, but that just made me even more horrified thinking of what she had planned for the students of her school. It became very tempting in that moment to just go for a kill on Ludum right then and there. I knew the shark.
Interesting power set. And did not know he could actually control both fire and metal like that. Then again, I don't know the video was introduced. I kind of jumped into the multiverse a little late.
Gang's field leader, my good friend Alexis, wouldn't be thrilled if I was actually able to pull that off, but if Ludum was so set in her ways, seeing it as her divine duty to torture people in this life, then it seemed like the best thing to do. But that also set up another problem. If she was really going to just go into her next life planning to torture and kill people again, we weren't really doing a good thing by killing her. I'm not saying it's an option we can rule out.
No, and not just kill her. You need to trap her soul, bind it to something.
For the good of our own multiverse, but if there is a way to rehabilitate her in this lifetime so that she stops wanting to act that way, then we could be saving far more people in this life and any potential future ones she may live. Kate and I didn't exactly have a moment to talk this through, though, and Kate had clearly heard enough. She threw her sword at Ludum, but Eloise was already on edge and ready for something like that. She must have activated some kind of invisible shield around herself before coming to meet us, because the sword just bounced off her chest. She caught it in one of the tassels she can spawn from her back and hurled it off into the distance. She floated higher up away from us. How rude! But at least now if you want your oversized butter knife back, you'll have to entertain me first. The sword flew across the barren landscape and it landed on the other side of a small horde of creatures that I don't know how I hadn't noticed. There were a couple of eyeless orange hound littles and a humongous armored dinosaur-like one.
Yeah.
They looked pretty similar to some aliens in a show I used to love as a kid back in my realm.
Oh yeah!
But at this point in adventuring around the multiverse, it's not rare for us to come across stuff like that. Although, I should have guessed that there were more like them waiting. I used one of my abilities to produce liquid metal from my hands to make Kate 2 smaller swords to fight with, in case she needed them. Then I tried to just fly over all the monsters and grab her actual weapon. The humongous one hurled some rocks at me, but I dodged them. Then another fiery creature shot into the air, flying in a pretty similar...
So we have Wild Smile, Heat Smile, and Humongous Smile.
...way to how I do, shooting flames from its hands. It gave me a bit of a run for my money and meant I couldn't easily get to Kate's sword. Thankfully, despite her not having any powers to speak of, she was making quick work of the hounds. By the time she got to the dinosaur thing, she had barely even broken a sweat. Not that I know Professor Goggins particularly well yet, but if you want to know what Kate is like fighting-wise, picture a pink-haired female version of him. You could cut her limbs off and she'd probably keep fighting on like it was just a flesh wound.
Literally pulling a Black Knight. And it's like, 'tis but a scratch. A scratch? Your arm is off. Oh, no it's not. What's that over there? Ah. 'Tis nothing. I can still fight.
Anyway, the humongous Little swung an arm at her, but she ducked under it and stabbed her weapon between its armored plating. She held tight and let the creature raise her up into the air. She let go of the lodged blade, flipped over its head, and stabbed the other blade right through its eye. She then slid down its back Legolas style and grabbed her weapon out of the ground.
Cool.
I managed to grab onto the other flying Little and used my own firepower to suck all the fire out of its body into me. Part of me wanted to attack Ludum after that, but I could see dozens, if not hundreds more, various Little-type creatures on the ground and in the skies in the distance, all approaching.
Oh, damn.
As tough as Kate is, she and I couldn't handle an army alone. We left Ludum's realm, and I had an idea starting to brew that I knew I'd need some guidance on whether it was worth trying to follow through on. I came to your wise and brilliant headmistress here and started discussing how Ludum could be handled, as well as how we could create a place where people like Ludum, people who were driven to do horrible things to others, could be rehabilitated. Not just a prison, but a place that could help show them how much better their own lives can become if they decide to focus more on doing good than harming people.
And thus, the RAS Foundation was, of course, found. But not by them, by Dresden Oakland himself.
That idea itself was secondary back then. First, we came up with the idea of making a connection between the LAFF and Tahe to get closer to Ludum, knowing there was no way she'd turn down the idea of a combat tournament between the two school students. Knowing the Sharp Gang's youngest members here, I figured there was no way we could do that without you guys trying to make a plan to take her down. So Miss Trismegistus decided to turn it into the secret extra credit project that it became. While we are excited to hear what you students have come up with, there is an additional factor to be added into the plan. Sterling waved his hand to someone behind the seated students. There was a loud bark that made Alcya jump. She whipped around, like the other students, to see a man with stony gray...
Yes! Dresden Oakland! And he has his Savalion!
Skin, setting his hand on the snout of a horse-sized, hound-like chimera creature that looked almost like it was right out of Dimension P138, save for the mechanical elements of its jaw. Alcya guessed, even before his name was said, that this was the stony, irksome cretin Ludum had been annoyed the Sharp Gang had taken in. Easy, Val. I apologize, everyone. This is a rather new ally of mine, and its manners are not yet reflective of my own. The creature snorted and shoved the man's shoulder. He walked around the students with his creature alongside him. Alcya was on the end of the row of seats, so the man and Val passed right next to her. The large hound glanced down at her and snorted. She couldn't resist and raised her hand to pet the creature's neck as it passed. Its fur was surprisingly soft for a beast that looked like it could rip her in half with a quick swipe. As she pet it, it stopped, and almost seemed to purr. The man glanced back to see his creature had stopped. He seemed like he was going to call the creature forward, but then met Alcya's eyes. Instead of urging Val on, he just said, "Val, please be seated." The creature sat down next to Alcya. The man nodded at her, and she continued to pet the large creature. She wasn't sure what this guy's deal was, but for letting her pet his giant dog thing, he was already in her good books. For now, anyway. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Professor Dresden Oakland, though, as I imagine most of you do not recognize me, other than Mr. Tajan, Ms. Fens, and Ms. Kuznet, you are all likely aware that I am not a professor at this school. Nor am I one from Ludum's Academy. In fact, the current...
It's great to see you, Dresden. It's been a while. How you been?
...endeavor I am attempting to take on, with some very much appreciated backing of the Trismegistus Academy, is not exactly a school at all, but is the very sort of rehabilitation center Mr. Angeal was speaking of. I have done some truly awful things in my own life, but with people like Sterling and our allies in the Sharp Gang helping to guide me, and with some, frankly, as of yet unearned forgiveness from people like Mr. Tajan and Ms. Fens, I have been able to redirect my life to do far more good than bad. Alcya glanced over to Jake and Anna. They both looked a little uncomfortable, but were also nodding, as if trying to be reassuring. Alcya wondered what Professor Oakland had done to them. He continued, "Seeing within myself
the back cells.
How dramatically one's mindset and outlook can be improved with the right guidance, I came up with the initial ideations of a rehabilitation center before even realizing Mr. Engeal and Ms. Trismegistus had discussed the possibility of working on a similar endeavor.
And thus,
now we are well underway building this facility and making far faster progress than any of us could have anticipated. Within the last few days, as hard as it may be to believe, we managed to get one of the Archon demons to align herself with us, and she is helping us rapidly elevate the creation of the Redemption Arc Support Foundation, or RAS Foundation for short. Here we will contain some of the most dangerous beings and creatures in the multiverse. Hopefully, by surrounding them with counselors and educators who can encourage them to change their ways and become more compassionate, they will feel driven to do better things with their lives, and eventually be released to benefit the multiverse, or, in the least, no longer threaten it. This is what we now hope to do with Eloise Ludum. For as long as she has lived, and as stubborn as she is, it may very well be impossible to inspire her to do better, but if we can convince her and show her the error of her ways, then it will be clear evidence that we can do this for even the worst of the worst beings to be found in the multiverse. So, as we move into hearing what plan your class may have begun developing to defeat Ludum, please keep in mind that our intention now is to capture her, not execute her, as would be understandable for many of you to want.
Capture, not kill. We can do that. Is it okay if she's not in one piece? Because we plan on taking a few limbs.
To do. He specifically nodded at Alcaya, knowing she was the only one who had actually been stuck with Ludum for a long period of time. Alcaya still preferred the idea of killing Ludum. Alcaya was convinced Eloise was never going to change. She also knew Katas and Waru were unlikely to be cool with going for an arrest instead of a kill, but she thought maybe she could just rely on them to deviate from the plan and take out Ludum somewhere along the way. Regardless, she just kept quiet, as Ms. Trismegistus stood again and said, "So, with that full explanation given, we would like to grant you all the floor. Whatever stage your own plans are at now, we'd like you to open them to wider conversation with the faculty, the Sharp Gang, and the RAS Foundation. While we intend to support you in this endeavor, we are very much simply support to your plan. You students have all proven yourselves to be much farther along in your heroic journeys than we anticipated when creating your class. Now, we want you all to have the opportunity to try leading a mission against a dangerous opponent, similar to whom you may face when you leave this school. So, students, while we may have to at least pretend to appease Ludum's demands in order to follow through with this plan, what did you all have in mind for defeating Eloise Ludum?"
Now, they actually need to discuss the plan. And this was actually a great big piece. We got 3 new monsters, and of course 2 classic heroes. One thing I do have to point out, though, that's a little bit of a shame, is that he only put an Omnitrix symbol, esque, on the Humongous Soul. He could have fit one on the heel on the Wild Mud, and maybe even just a green glow on the chest of the Heat Blast, but it was his choice, his call. Well, I'm just a fan that can state his opinion. But that's it.
I would say that's not quite as epic as the big battle scene from Fear of the Demon Hunters between all the Zodiac angels and demons, but that
not even close.
Did turn out pretty sick. And it was a lot of fun working with Ben 10 designs again. Admittedly, I kind of just shoehorned those laughing littles into this episode so that I would have something cool to draw, but I'm very glad I did that now, because that was a fun piece. Anyway, as I mentioned in that episode where I made a whole bunch of different announcements of upcoming projects, I am surprised.
Ooh, wait, did that say Pantheon Reapers?
As I mentioned in that episode where I made a whole bunch of different
Pantheon Reapers. Oh, second season's gonna be awesome!
Announcements of upcoming projects, I am surprisingly far along already in making a coloring book. Gonna start by doing a Dragons coloring book, so keep a lookout for announcements on that in the next couple weeks.
Nice.
It may be out in like the next few weeks. And of course, Mytholethal, Vigilance, my old Monsters of the Multiverse art book. All of those are up and linked in the description if you want hard copies of my work. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note. And the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote I read this week that simply said, "There's a version of you 10 years from now wishing that you enjoyed where you were right now a little bit more."
It's so easy to get stuck in a pattern of always thinking that life starts in a week, a month, a year when I achieve this thing. But your life is happening right now. Even in the moments when you're trying to build towards something and even when things aren't necessarily feeling great. But being here in the moment with what's here is better than just constantly projecting into the future. So I hope that's a helpful reminder. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.
Alright everyone, that's going to be the end of today's video, and I hope you all enjoyed. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original video will be in the description below, and I'll see all of you next time when we flick back on. Till then, this is Fox, signing out. Peace.